Welcome to Real Estate in the Digital Age, or the REDA podcast. Real estate entrepreneurs Ryan Poole and Ryan Beckett bring you new content every week, reporting on market trends, industry innovations, cutting-edge real estate technology, and perspectives from the field. The future of real estate is here. Are you ready?
All right, welcome everyone to the REDA podcast, Real Estate in the Digital Age. I feel like I say this always since when we start the podcast. I'm really excited, but I am extra excited today. I feel like we made somewhat of a mistake in that we haven't brought up 1909 really yet.
Yeah.
And 1909 is a organization where we're recording from. All three of us will introduce Nick Mohnacky in a second. And it is all entrepreneurs. It's an incubator. They have an accelerator program that Bit Realty is going through. Real Trade went through the accelerator program. And it is an amazing community more than anything. So I just want to give shout outs to 1909 for allowing us to record here and making sure that the audience is aware of it. It's called 1909 because that's when Palm Beach County was founded. That's where we're recording in downtown West Palm Beach. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Nicholas Mohnacky.
Hey, guys.
He's a good friend, a fellow 1909 member. One of my favorite entrepreneurs to ask questions to, get advice from. He's been in the space for a long time, helped start up Palm Beach, was a precursor to 1909. And this is exciting, like I was saying at the beginning of the podcast, because like the audience, I'm going to be listening a lot to this because artificial intelligence and augmented intelligence and knowledge is something that I've always been real curious about. Ever since the movie Terminator, right? And machine learning, hearing Elon Musk say some of the scary stuff, like, that could be the downfall to our society. That's like the futuristic doomsday. But, we were talking before the podcast, there's a ton of stuff that I didn't even realize that artificial intelligence does for us. And the reason we brought Nick Mohnacky, in addition to being a friend of the podcast, is his company is called BundleIQ. I'll let him explain to what he does. And it is using artificial intelligence, AI, to help people. So go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. And it's been quite the journey, not only building the startup ecosystem here in West Palm Beach, but it's been fun, to see the fruits of my labor and many people that have kind of come to, the rallying cry to support early stage founders in the city. But as a founder myself, I think a lot about, how to solve the world's most pressing problems. I mean, I'm a millennial. I think we're all millennials.
Yeah, I made it by a year.
I'm right on the border.
But there's just so many challenges in this world that are mind-numbing in terms of like, how do you solve, for COVID and like pandemics and all these things? How do you solve for climate change? I mean, it's like not one thing. I mean, it's a big elephant and you got to do it one bite at a time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is when you're working as a knowledge worker, because we've kind of evolved from the industrial age into the information age, and now over 1 billion people across the planet, I think 3 billion even, are considered knowledge workers, which means we use our mind to create value and solve problems in the world. We are totally overwhelmed by information.
Mm-hmm.
As a society, we've done a great job saving information, and we've sort of broke Moore's law, so to speak, with scaled computing, cloud computing. So we've got a lot of information, but in terms of making sense of it and making use of it is really where we struggle tremendously, because our aptitude and just our biological structure isn't built for that.
Mm-hmm.
So we built BundleIQ to basically be an AI assistant that helps people not only make sense of information, but make use of it. And we can talk more about that. But yeah.
So can you give the audience just kind of like a high level? Why would they go to download the app? Like, what would be the use case that you guys were solving a problem?
So our beachhead market are really like researchers and analysts, people that spend a lot of time with information, gathering information, so that you would go out into the internet, download white papers. I mean, you're doing your dissertation now. I'm sure you've spent a lot of time reading.
Yeah.
So you can gather information, import it into BundleIQ. We basically build a knowledge graph of that data, which means that we're creating correlations in all of the content, in all the pages, and then you as a user, as you're using it, you're taking notes on the content, and then you can actually click our AI, which is kind of like a little infinity loop looking logo icon. You can click on that, and it'll say, okay, based on what you're writing in this moment, Ryan, you need to check out page 122, you need to check out page 34, you need to check out page 48 of all this content that you have in your knowledge base.
Wow. So it's almost like an easy access organization of all that knowledge, breaking Moore's law and having access that uses AI to kind of bubble it up right at the right time.
That's right.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, we surface those relevant and contextual insights in that moment as you're creating. And so we like to say that we help people co-create with AI.
Yeah.
Which is
I got to give a plug here too, because I use it every single day, Ryan. Obviously to manage my team with Real Trade. I actually keep it even as a CRM Lite for my real estate contacts, investor contacts, and just the notes that I'm taking every single day. And the nice thing is I can collaborate with the whole team.
Whole team, yeah.
Yeah, in real time, which is amazing, which is great. Hey, let's back up a little bit here. I love Bundle, what you're doing here, and I think it's a big disruption. Just for the listeners out there, what is AI, Nick? Like, explain what is artificial intelligence, Nick, just for the listener listening back at home.
It's funny because in the industry, and I don't, I'm definitely, I guess, a thought leader at this point in the industry, but I'm probably not nearly as smart as a lot of the people that have created these technologies. But I'm more of a practitioner and somebody that has been a tech entrepreneur and business owner, founder since 2010, since I was 25. And I got into AI probably like 4.5 years ago, so right around the time frame that the Transformer was created. Google Brain came out that, I think, late 2017. But to answer your question about AI, is it's really kind of a catch-all phrase for something that appears intelligent, and it could be an action, it could be an automation, it could be a prompt, it could be a processing unit or framework. We think about maybe some of the more practical application of AI is an autonomous vehicle. I guess maybe not now, but into the future. But Siri, if I text you, Ryan, and I say, "Hey, man, let's meet for lunch on Tuesday at 12," Siri just goes, "Hey, do you want to add this to your schedule?" That's AI.
Yeah.
It's but in terms of and there's a lot of sort of back, I guess inside baseball around what constitutes AI.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were talking before the podcast. I didn't realize that even Grammarly, which I love and use all the time from my emails to my dissertation itself, and you guys were explaining to me even that has AI in it.
Yeah, definitely. It certainly has what's called natural language processing, the ability to interpret and comprehend and make use of and make sense of the words that you're writing on a page.
And while we're giving definitions, we've talked about, and you've explained it to me before, augmented, right? Knowledge. Like what's the difference? How would you parse that?
Yeah, just so zooming way out, AI as an industry, I recently read I think it was Gardner maybe, but they said it was a $340+ billion industry last year.
Wow.
And estimated to be over $500 billion by 2024. So it's growing quickly, but there are multiple kind of components of AI. I mean, the autonomous vehicle is clearly an automation. It's sort of removing the human from the equation. And if you wanted to generate a report, you can automate that process, and that's also AI, which is removing humans. And we've had a lot of political conversations about what the future of the workforce looks like, but there's also this other type of AI, which you alluded to, which is augmented intelligence. And what that is the ability to enhance human capacity, where humans and machines are actually working together to co-create and amplify the human's ability to solve problems.
Wow. Yeah. And with that, not to keep on bringing movie reference, I think of RoboCop, right? Because he was a human that was kind of made in somewhat of a cyborg, and he had data, information in real time that was displayed that made him like a super cop, right?
Totally. Yeah. Some people actually Jasper used to be called Jarvis. You remember? Just another something. Anyway, I can't remember what it stands for, but. Anyway, from Iron Man, right? The Iron Man reference, yeah. But yeah, that's essentially what the augmented intelligence is meant to be. Is meant to augment human capacity, because you're you're able to interact with this AI and have these like superpowers essentially.
Right. Super interesting.
Yeah, I did. I mean, the other day I was like, we were talking about AI, Nick and I was like, man, I sat there, I'm like, I have like 4 or 5 apps that I'm paying for that I'm leveraging AI right now. One of them is Otter, which is great, which is, speech to text app. Obviously, Grammarly, use that every single day because I'm not the best writer, even though my father was an English teacher. Jasper, which is great for writing sales copy, Jasper AI. And then, of course, the big one I use most every day is your app, BundleIQ. And so then the AI saved me some I'm taking notes on something, doing some research, and I'm typing Ryan, and they're like, wait, you've already written this.
Right.
Here it is. Like, you don't have to do double the work. So now you probably save yourself quite a bit of time. I have.
And you were explaining to me that our CRM at Bit Realty even use AI, right? And it helps a realtor be more efficient with the follow-ups and when they're looking and all that stuff,
I mean,
right?
yeah, that's another one. I mean, we use, Sync, right, which is CRM, client management system, and it's using AI is looking what your clients' properties they're viewing, their emails they're opening, and it's giving them a score and then prompting you to reach out to them. Like, you could never remember that in your own mind. You'd have to sit there and look at a spreadsheet all day long to get that kind of data, and it's literally bringing it to you instantaneously.
Right. So what we're all curious about in the audience is like, so how do we continue to push this into real estate? Like, making me aware of stuff that already has it that I wasn't aware of. But, we've been, perusing all the publications, The Real Deal, Inman Magazine. We've been having a lot of conversations. What do you see, Ryan Poole, and that we can talk to Nick about as it relates to the real estate sector?
Yeah, I think a big use case that's happening now, and there's actually a number of startups. One of them is called Placer AI, which is it's actually measuring traffic through cell phones, people's cell phones, into commercial real estate spaces. So imagine they're having all this data from all these users on their cell phone, where they're traveling, where they're going, then giving them better scores of maybe where you want to purchase that commercial real estate.
Right.
And there's a lot of these big firms that are paying a lot of money for that kind of insight.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, right? Let's say I have 2 coffee shops and I'm looking to open up a coffee shop in my 3rd location, and what do? You go at like breakfast, and you sort of just stand on the street corner and look around and say, all right, what's going on here? And you're like counting heads. That type of big data can really drive decision making. In the city of West Palm Beach, I know that they have, and I don't know if it's still active, but like a couple of years ago, maybe just pre-COVID, they partnered with Florida Atlantic University to create an IoT kind of campaign where they place these devices to basically track pedestrian flow and traffic and that sort of thing, so that they could help make better decisions about their urban planning and strategic how they were going to spend money.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about data, right? But how you process it and what you're able to basically, comb out of that data that's relevant to your industry is really what matters, right? And I think that's a big part of the AI is it can really parse that data down to something that's very valuable to somebody like purchasing real estate.
Yeah. I've used IBM Watson in research, and, if you had to run regression analysis for high corollary significance on a bunch of different things, it could take you forever, but you can just drop your data in there and you can tease out findings that you weren't even thinking about testing. And sometimes your null hypothesis, depending on what you get, is the most interesting finding that you can have. So another thing I learned is garbage in, garbage out with data, right? It's also the quality of the data going on. And I'm probably dating myself, but I remember as a kid, I think they still do it to some degree. They just have lines in the street that they're clicking counters, right? That's like the old school way they used to do it. But now you wonder what Apple and Android is doing with your data. Well, there's a use case.
They're selling it.
There's a use case. There's a use case for very interesting data that could be to the benefit of the coffee shop proprietor, to commercial real estate broker, to, depending. I've seen, I think, was it Realtor.com gives walking scores? I think there's some, different things in terms of walking score based on the type of residence. I always thought it was interesting, and I feel like Compass seemed to clearly lose its way a little bit based on its stock price, but I thought they were really interesting. And, sometimes you're too early. And they started in New York City and the different boroughs using artificial intelligence to help match people to find rentals. We're obviously a huge part of the market in New York City. And then as they got more investors and grew the board, they tend to grow more and more to a normal
brokerage model.
boring, in my opinion, residential brokerage model. But, they started out looking to disrupt. And I'm the kind of guy that I'll wait in line overnight for the new iPhone, right?
Yeah.
So I'll admit that I'm the early adopter. And sometimes, with tech, I'm a hammer and everything looks like a nail. So what I'm really interested in is what we're seeing in the articles we've read and conversations we had that actually can move the needle, not only for realtors, but for you when you go to buy a house, for one of our friends when they go to lease a place, when we're working with a client. Not what just is going to make my brokerage and me as a realtor better, but what's going to actually move the needle for all involved in the process. And that's what I'm really interested in looking at and watching.
Yeah, I'm actually seeing it. Well, you kind of alluded to it, like, the valuation tools, right? Everybody knows the Z estimate, and as big data gets bigger and can use more AI, that can get more concise, right? But then you start to look at a macro level, like interest rates, like how are they figuring those in, and those kind of things, or like the flood in Tampa, like how would you ever, there's all these kind of things that could go into evaluating a home.
So it's a great question, and it's going to be a little nerdy and in the weeds, but what I always found interesting is, and you guys can fact check me, but I believe this to be true based on what I've read, is that Einstein, when asked what one of the greatest discoveries of the century was, you expect him to say theory of relativity or whatever, he said compound interest. Compound interest is one of the greatest discoveries, and anyone in the investment field knows the power of compound interest. And I equate that, and you know where I'm going with this?
That's good.
Machine learning.
Yeah.
Right? So prima facie, we look at something, we're like, yeah, how can a machine figure that out and, be better than a couple realtors doing a price valuation? But with machine learning, you have that one-fold, two-fold, three-fold, right? And in the machine learning, it gets to a point, not to say it's eventually sentient, but it makes itself better, right? And that's kind of the exciting, not to be doomsday, maybe a little scary, maybe that's what Elon Musk is referring to, but the machine learning part of it, because correct me if I misunderstand it, but what it is now is not what it will be even tomorrow, right? Because it's getting better. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it can get better. It just depends on what path you put it on.
Right.
So and that's kind of the, we're sort of the ventriloquists, right? It's like what was it? Facebook created the two machines, and they started like communicating in different languages together, right? But as it relates to real estate, I mean, I think there have been some pretty significant windfalls with the use of AI. I mean, you mentioned the Z estimate. Like, wasn't there like several $100 million lost or something like that?
Yeah, because it wasn't on. Yeah, they
Yeah.
they weren't quite on with their.
Because we did the podcast on the iBuyers, which
on the
basically
iBuyers,
imploded.
The Zillow had its iBuyer program, which they were leaning on when they were purchasing them.
Yeah, that's interesting. As it relates to real estate itself, a lot of the big data aspects of it are probably the most interesting because the more we learn about our markets and the more we learn about our communities and what makes them more walkable, sustainable. Even thinking about climate change and how high you need to build houses.
Flood insurance.
Yeah,
flood insurance.
Well,
flood insurance.
Insurance is a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
I mean, right? I mean, that could be a big use case, obviously, because these big insurance companies trying to mitigate the risk. And if they have all this great data, and they could literally go to almost on the house level, right?
Yeah.
And start to
basically AI actuaries, right? That are basically charging premiums more accurately based on risk. I mean, I have friends and some family out on the west coast of Florida now. Some of them are going to fix their house and they're not coming back. They're like, I'm going to rebuild for what? To have to be worried about this again? Down here in Florida, other people are like, it won't hit me again. We're good. So you have a little bit of a mixed spectrum of opinions, but just if a walking score is important, I want to know what my resiliency score is, right? Like, what am I investing in? Not to mention the banks. The banks are literally your business partner on buying a property. That's why your credit score matters. That's why the amount of money you put down matters. That all effectuates their risk, right? So they have to start factoring this in, whether it's a tsunami, an earthquake, a hurricane, which is more local to our area. It's important. It's important I would say, it would go factored into his estimate. It would get factored into a value, in my opinion, right?
Yeah. It's interesting that there's a guy here that works out of this office that it has a resiliency software as it relates to real estate in particular.
Oh wow.
And he just bought a bunch of land in Scotland
Okay.
because of that. So I think he partnered with a scientist out of the University of Maryland, and they have this software which they haven't released yet. So I won't speak to any details, but basically it's that. It's like, okay, if you were to look at the map of the world, where can you go when climate change, from, let's say, 30 years from now, like where would the best place, be to live? And, so he just, yeah, he bought land in Scotland, so.
Well, Edinburgh, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, right? I mean, the Gulf Stream does go up that way. I know
Yeah.
they do get some warm temperatures.
Yeah,
there.
but he's making a real estate play for it.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
Something I haven't really found yet, which doesn't mean it's not out there, but prepping for the podcast, it's matching, and we've talked about some similarities and analogies in real estate to dating,
Yes.
right? Whether you're finding a realtor, you're finding a home, it's kind of like you're going on Hinge, right? Or
Swipe. Everybody
you're
wants
swiping,
to swipe.
right? And they learn. They're like, okay, they like people with this kind of hair, this kind of eye color, this age group, right? And it learns, and a lot of these dating apps try to get better on its matching because that's in their interest and in their customers' interest. In real estate, it still feels to me like a blunt instrument.
It does.
Right? Because I have a buyer that says, hey, I don't want a townhouse. I want a single family home. I want X, Y, and Z. I don't want this. And then it feels a little clunky in 2022 to me because, you're setting up an automatic search and you're trying to go in there and adjust the parameters. And I haven't seen an AI application for that. And, a lot of people get a glass of wine with their significant other and they're on Zillow till all hours of the night and they're looking, they're pinging their realtor, they're sending emails back and forth like two ships passing in the night. And it seems to be very clunky. There's got to be a way, and like I said, maybe there is, for AI to help with the matchmaking, Have you heard of anything like that, Poole?
No, I haven't yet. I mean, one big thing with Zillow's model, it's going to be kind of tough for them to do that, right? Where they're going to try pick them with a certain property. But yeah, that's something I'd love to look at RealTrade.
Yeah.
I mean, something that we can use AI matching buyers and sellers because people, like you said, nowadays, especially the millennials and younger, they love to swipe. And it's great information.
Yeah, I mean, if you had you create a minimum viable product of that is like if you had a profile of your buyer, you could pretty much deliver the most relevant homes just based on a profile. And that could be doable today. The swiping piece of it is a bit more like machine learning. They're sort of starting to build their own profile by swiping. But if they're, just based on price, based on how many kids they have, like how high of a priority education might be, things like that.
School districts would be.
Yeah, and that's more of like a filtering system, an affinity system. But, the other thing is like just, let's say you don't want to live in South Florida anymore. You're spooked, right? Where are you going to live? Like what other place, and this is where machine learning AI could really help too, or big data in general, is like what other place is most similar to here? And for me, I can think of one just because I've traveled a lot, is Cardiff by the Sea and Encinitas, California, North County, San Diego. But outside of that, I don't really know.
Yeah. Well, because you actually, part of the reason you picked this area, I think you told me a while back, was because of the latitude, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like a romantic way to say it.
It was a similar.
It's very Jimmy Buffett of you.
Yeah. I love it. I love it.
But yeah, it's because it's the tropics. I mean, like Stewart South, which is like Palm Beach County South, essentially is like the Hawaii of the mainland,
right?
United States here. Coconut trees grow here, so it's like so beautiful. Yeah, and you're a free diver, so it's like
it's paradise for here. I mean, I one of the few people I say I have no desire to live anywhere else than here in Palm Beach County.
Yeah,
love it.
And you're from Minnesota, right?
Yeah, originally
up there.
But I was way ahead of the curve, Ryan. I've been here for over 20 years.
Oh, there you go.
That's true.
There you go.
Yeah, well, it's exciting. I mean, it's kind of two sides of the spectrum. One is you have the future of work. So as real estate brokers and agents, you're thinking about like how can I be more efficient and how can I like not not drop the ball, especially in a busy market, which we've had in the last 10 years, 5 years at least. How can I keep up with people? You know, you're standing in their line at a coffee shop and you're like, oh, I just met this awesome person. Like, you know, chances are you're probably not going to put it in a CRM. You know, you're not going to open up your CRM and click on the, you know, add new deal tab and like all that kind of stuff. And that's where I hear you using BundleIQ.
Yeah, because I just get it like in real time. I just put it into Bundle.
Write it down.
Boom, just instantaneously.
Right.
Yeah.
And then as you're writing an email, or as you're, you know, taking notes or whatever, you can analyze that, and it'll be like, hey, there's somebody here that you met in a coffee shop that's looking for 3-1, as it relates to this, you know, one out in Wellington that you're servicing or whatever. And then besides that, you know, you've got the real estate buyer, so that's on the professional side. And then you have the buyer side, which, you know, they're relying on guys like you to build technology for them so that they can find their dream home at a good price, and, you know, and navigate the market, which is not straightforward.
Yeah.
So that's a great segue here in the consumer side. We've talked a lot about the real estate professionals, how they can leverage AI here, and investors and different things like that. But actually, smart homes. I mean, it's here right now, right? I mean, where they're leveraging AI. I mean, obviously, I know a lot of people have Alexa, you know, in their home.
Yeah, smart homes are really like the future of homes, you know. I think just when you think about climate change in general, it's like people are trying to figure out how to offset and optimize. So smart homes have definitely helped with that. I think Nest is probably whoever invented Nest should get a Nobel Prize or something, right? Like,
so I think we were going into Nest, right? And Nest as a company, is that using AI, Nest?
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Really? Man, I feel like all these things I just didn't even realize. You know, even before the podcast, you guys were like, yeah, of course it's using AI. It's one of those background things. Is AI getting enough credit or too much credit, would you say?
It's as I mentioned, like at the beginning, it's a bit of an ambiguous phrase, term, phrase, whatever you want to call it. It's you know, people. It's just a bunch of algorithms, right? Like it's in the background, and it's in what makes it artificial intelligence is it feels like it's doing something smart.
So, but doesn't the machine learning kind of change that a little bit, in that the way at least my brain wraps around it is, yeah, it's almost like you're sending your kid to school and then they're learning, right? So yes, it's algorithms, but they're making themselves better, and then they're building on better by getting better on that, and that's really. To me, that's really the exciting part of it, right?
Yeah, the machine learnings and the neural nets are what make AI.
What about when the machines create their own AI?
Right? Well, that's kind of, I think, what Nick was alluding to with
I know.
Facebook. They had some concerns with that, right? And that's one of the reasons that they disconnected it, right?
Yeah.
And again, that's what happened with Terminator. They became self-aware,
Yeah.
if you remember. And what is the most biological thing we have in common with everything? Any living thing, it's survival. That is the most basic tenet of what we do. So if there's some self-awareness with some dramatic leaps forward in machine learning, and then they deem us as a threat, that's kind of the crux on that whole story. And Ray Bradbury, in an interview on Fahrenheit 451, it was one of my favorite interviews. I bring it up probably way too much, but he was asked by an interviewer, "Are you trying to predict the future with, you know, kind of this dystopian things?" He goes, "No, I'm trying to prevent it."
Wow.
Right? So sometimes it's always good, both as an entrepreneur, as a citizen, as a curious person, to think a few moves ahead, right? And so, you know, we talked about this, like the Wayne Gretzky quote. You know, he said what made him a great hockey player is because he skates to where the puck's going to be, not where it is. So that's why we do this podcast, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we're talking about AI, is what does that look like for realtors, brokers, brokerages, buyers, sellers, renters, and this will be, as everything will, because technology just changes so fast, this will be an evolving podcast, because I'm with the audience here. I'm just learning.
Yeah.
So we're just scratching the surface. So yeah, is there anything else you wanted to talk about as it relates to AI?
Yeah, well, we talked about the Nest, obviously, which is great, which makes your home more efficient, saves you money. I mean, better for the environment. That's a big one. There's actually a couple startups now coming into the space leveraging AI in real estate, and it has to do with security. I'm studying one that's coming out. It's actually, a listening device that you can put on your home, right? Basically like a microphone, and it's listening to the sounds of your home, outside your home, and it starts to pattern what your home sounds like. And if something's different, it alerts you. So it could be someone walking through your grass, those kind of things. Of course, if you have that teenage daughter sneaking in at night,
Yeah.
pick that kind of stuff up and ruin the fun. But yeah, there's things like that are coming out too as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is privacy. I'm like, ugh, I don't know about this. But if it's like infrared computer vision or something along those lines, and it's just recognizing patterns based on, certain times of day,
Yeah.
or things that are off, anomalies.
Yeah.
Well, like the ring, like we spoke about,
Yeah.
about the ring, how much that's changed, with real estate. You use it, right?
Oh, I use it all the time, And I can tell you from real estate friends, when the homeowner has a ring in their house, I bet they act a little bit more buttoned up, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're having an open house or people
Yeah.
are going through, you never know.
That's true.
You never know. You got to be way more careful.
That's a good point. Showing houses with ring, your conversation could be recorded, and what you're saying to your clients could be passed on to the seller.
You said you had 10 people at the open house? I don't know about that, So it's interesting. It makes us all more honest, but it's kind of like the Patriot Act, not to be political, but, you have to have a balance of, do you want the benefits that come with you giving the data? Right. And that's kind of the trade-off that society is having. But it's exciting, with real estate, it's like we say, it's almost a cliche. It's your largest, most likely, and most emotional investment. Right. So it'll be interesting to see, how the fingerprints, I've been discussing with Nick, and I'm going to continue to do so, on how BundleIQ with teams, at Bit Realty, can help. We mentioned about real trade. But how can it help with collaboration with our teams in real estate? And one of the things that, with COVID and tech and people going away from the offices, is I've noticed we lose some collaboration, which is to the benefit of the realtor and to the clients themselves. And here's why. I started in kind of old school real estate, right? I was new development, had a office at the front gate of the community, and we had walk-ins, and we had our whole sales thing. And sometimes I would have an issue, like I couldn't find a place for that client for that month for a seasonal rental because the landlords had a 4-month minimum, for example.
Yeah.
And then because I worked at the office and I communicated with the other agents in the group, all of a sudden I heard one of my colleagues, Dave, said he couldn't find something because they only wanted the back end of the season. And I was like, whoa. I was like, I have someone that only wants the front end. So let's put them together. Now the landlord's happy. We have 2 happy clients, and we wouldn't have been able to service either one of those tenants in that scenario. That's just one of many examples. And I see that AI, BundleIQ, that could help that, I believe, right? So you use BundleIQ for collaboration. So with agents in Jupiter and Fort Lauderdale and Tampa and all over the place, and hard to get them to come to the office and show up for meetings and communicate, I think that could be a real good solution to helping people. They're like, oh, I'm typing this thing, I'm doing a search. Oh, Kim Jannard that works at Bit Realty, she had someone looking for what you're getting ready to list, right? And that's to the benefit of all.
So the big question is, in that example that you just gave, is where does this information live? You're like, oh, I have somebody for that, but how would they know?
Yeah.
Where does that live, right?
Right.
And that's really the challenge as a founder that I'm up against, is like, okay, I have to get it's not just like one tool, it's a system, right? So it's all about, and you've done a great job with this real trade, but it's into buying into Bundle, but like it's really the system. It's like all the touch points where information could potentially be trapped.
Got it.
And so in that case, I don't know where the information was. I don't know if it was on a Post-it note on your desk. I don't know if it was in an email. I don't know if it was just in your head.
In the agent's head.
You had a conversation with somebody over cocktails at Polo,
Well, the answer, unfortunately, is all the above.
I mean,
Right.
I really do think there comes a time, it's like Otter AI, where every conversation you have could be recorded, putting it into a database, and then you ask a question, it cross references it like through.
Well, that's what we can do that. So in this case, that person could have just clicked, like imagine that the information was available, even if it was in your email. They just like had this request or this something come in. Maybe it's an email from their customer, and they could just analyze that email, and it would literally come up. And this is part of like the collective intelligence, is what we talk about. Is your note would come up and say, blah 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 about I don't know, I remember exactly what he said, but horse barn is for rent.
Right.
And that would just come up. It would just come up. All they had to do is analyze the email that was inbound because they're like, I don't know if I can answer this. I can't respond to this email because I don't have the information.
Right.
So I need to ask Ryan, but Ryan's on an airplane or whatever Ryan's doing. He's in a meeting. So what you could do is just analyze that, and then it would just say, oh, here's the note, and Ryan actually does have this, and then he could just reply and confirm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Really interesting. What I'd like to do with the audience also is, like I said, this will be an evolving thing because the space is evolving, right? And technology moves quickly, so there will always be updates and continued conversations. If there's something that you've seen as it relates to real estate, artificial intelligence, I never say the augmented, right? Is it augmented intelligence or knowledge?
Yeah, just think, you say augmented reality.
Yeah, because that's the VR, AR
Yeah.
thing, right? Yeah.
It's augmented intelligence.
Which I love both of those too. So yeah, if you at the audience, the audience at home, if you guys have anything you guys would like us to look at that you're aware of that's helping your business, helping your search, helping you sell your home, any of that above, just send us an email at theredapodcast@gmail.com. Ryan, can you think of anything that we haven't covered yet?
No, it's awesome. Let's leave with Nick, man. Thanks for coming on the show, Nick. Nick, where can they find you? Where can the listener find you and check out Bundle and all the awesome AI that you have to offer?
Yes, thank you for having me. And you can go to bundleiq.com and all the stuff. You can find me, you basically go to our YouTube. We have tons of YouTube tutorials if you're just interested in seeing what it's all about. If there's any Notion users out there, which I think there's over 30 million people use Notion, we have an integration with Notion, so you can kind of supercharge your workspace there if you'd like. And it works inside Gmail as well, so that's pretty cool.
Wow, so you guys have Gmail, you have an app in App World and Google Play?
Yeah, on the App Store, on the Chrome Store, and then we have a Notion integration and a web app, so it's pretty comprehensive.
Wow, and so they can do with their note-taking, their knowledge base, their Gmail, and even PDFs, right?
Yeah. So if you're, I don't know, let's say you're doing research, market research or something like that, in your case doing a dissertation on cryptocurrency or tokenization of real estate, you can import PDFs into Bundle, and you could have thousands and thousands of PDFs, and we basically connect the dots for you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, it's powerful. Well, we're going to continue to kick this ball around because maybe here on this podcast we come up with ideas to make both buyers, sellers, realtors' lives better, more efficient, and more productive. Because that's what is tech if that's not what
exactly.
it does.
Why
Isn't
that the whole
That's
the whole reason for tech, to make our lives easier, simpler, more efficient?
Yes. Totally. So smash the like button, subscribe, give us a review if you'd be so inclined, and we're on all social media channels, the REDA Podcast. Nick, BundleIQ, thank you very much for being a guest.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Nick.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Let's get it.